Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello everyone, so it's the final pre-Christmas pod, and what a game week again. Bring back Noel Edmonds, forget Stephen Mulhern for a slightly reinvented mystery box game. It's Dom or no Dom. And sat here with no Dom. This is a case where two rather irked, aging gentlemen whose tempers have been roused by a game involving moving little shirts around the football pitch have been so annoyed to the extent that they decided to log on to a video streaming site to share that rant with the world. Yes, here we are live on YouTube, but of course there should be a usual pod as well. I'm Tom. I'm here with a beer. I think I'm not going to drink tomorrow because Christmas Day is just around the corner. But hey, there we go. And speaking of beer, I'm joined by Sam, who has been out on the Raz for 2 days in a row. All afternoon. So yeah, there we go. How many beers in you now? I've got to catch up, haven't I?
Oh well, I mean, if we're counting yesterday as well, then probably a few too many. But today, 5 or 6. Went and watched the Liverpool Arsenal game down the pub as well with an old mate of mine who actually we got into FPL together a few years ago. So it's good to catch up with him. So shout out to Josh, FPL Jobber on Twitter. So go follow him. But yeah, it was great fun. Obviously, the way the game week has actually panned out has been catastrophic for both of us. But I think it was a little bit nicer with a pint at the pub at Christmas. It's taken the edge off a little bit. So I'm not feeling quite as bad as maybe some of the weeks over the last few weeks, especially when we've had some pretty rough red arrows. So yeah, so it's definitely a big red arrow and a bad week, but I'm feeling Christmassy. So, and I'm a little bit drunk as well, to be fair. So I'm not too bad.
Yeah, that always helps, doesn't it? The alcohol. So what are we going to discuss today?
So, as always, we are Who Got the Assist. We're streaming live, so any hiccups, any tech issues, we do apologise. We're trying this out for the first time. Hopefully it all goes well. And yeah, hello to everyone in the live chat as well. Get your questions in. We'll try and scan through the live chat if we can. It is our first time, so do bear with us if we miss anyone out. But on today's pod, we thought as it's Christmas, we'd have a beer and just have a bit of a chat, a bit of a reflection on Game Week 18. As it is so far, not too much of an agenda. We'll try to go for 45 minutes to an hour. Because we're doing it live, it might end up running over. They usually do. But we'll go through the bold claims. We'll go through the questions that we get on the live stream and any we got in on X on Twitter beforehand as well. As I mentioned a minute ago, we're at the end of the Liverpool-Arsenal game. I think it finished about an hour ago now. So Saturday, 23rd of December, one game to go, which is Chelsea-Wolves tomorrow. But I think we've all got a fair idea of how the game week's gone. So we can probably move on to scores on the doors, right, Tom?
Oh, do we fucking have to? It's not.
No, we don't.
It wasn't very long ago that we were doing a very similar pod, being like, oh, it's all fine, you know, it's all process. It is this, it's that. But yeah, game week 15, that was Sam's, and not very long ago. We had a disaster, and here we are again, straight into a disaster zone. I mean, it's been very, very frustrating. The only move we made this week, I think, because Cooper got sacked, I was planning on rolling it and planning on playing Mr. Turner. But yeah, got sacked. I thought, well, you know what, Vlachodimos is definitely going to be coming in, you know, under Nuno, etc., etc. So I should probably make a move here. Got Leno in, and I think Leno's expected goals prevented was like minus 1.56 or something like that. It was an absolutely abysmal performance.
In a 2-0 defeat, that is really bad.
To Burnley. And just speaking of abysmal, the whole team is just abysmal, really. I mean, a Porro clean sheet went, I think that was kind of, that was written when Dyer came on at half time, wasn't it? Shimikas broke his collarbone, falling into his manager Jurgen Klopp, so he's going to be out. Ben White got a yellow card at the end of the game, absolute bell end. Saliba was on my bench, so it doesn't matter. In midfield, Gordon unfortunately did decide to show up, which blocked Cameron Archer, who I was never going to play, and people who said they were thinking of playing him, jog on. There's just no way in hell you were thinking of doing that. Salah scored, but I mean, that's irrelevant for me because he was over 100%. Son also scored a goal, and Palmer still to play. Martinelli, I am sick of the sight of him. Honestly, I think he may well just go on this stream. To be honest, I'm sick.
Oh, a live rage transfer, that would be amazing.
At 60 plus, like 60th minute, you always see bloody Trossard with his droopy eyes getting up, like jogging around. And you think, oh, for God's sake, there's Martinelli gone. That has to count as probably one of the worst transfers I've ever made in FPL, and I've made some absolute stinkers. But Martinelli has been diabolical. I remember saying to you, right, here's data from last year. Oh, look, he matched Saka. And it has been anything but absolute travesty of a transfer. So he's got to go soon, as does Darwin bloody Nunez. You can't spell disaster without Darwin. Hang on. Does that work? No, it doesn't. But hey, absolute disaster. Again, benched. I hope that means he plays Burnley. He's going to be held for Burnley. But yeah, selling Watkins for him and also not going to Solanke, we'll speak about that in a bit, was just again an absolute nightmare. Really, it's been awful. The parade of absolute liability performances from the donkey Darwin and Watkins Blacks. And this week has been this weekend. I've been off work. Well, I'm now off work until January, so a bit more time just on my phone, just looking at Twitter X a bit more, and it's been hilarious. The hindsighting, it really has. Like, the amount of people out there who have realised, who thought last week, oh, actually, I'm going to captain another player who hasn't blanked, and had these thoughts in their head that I didn't ever share until Watkins blanks, and then suddenly, oh, actually, no, I was thinking of captaining Son. I was thinking of captaining Salah, actually. Here's a WhatsApp I sent two weeks ago. There's something along those lines. Absolutely hilarious. It's been great sport. And on the bench this week, yes, Archer with a goal, Taylor with a clean sheet. And rank has been, I think, doubled down to 600. I think after auto subs, I don't think Cole Palmer is going to arrest that because no Dom. So yes, very, very, very disappointing. Obviously, I'm being glib. I'm not actually that upset. I had a really nice day with my family, and my daughter stood up for the first time. So I'm really, really happy. It's just one of those things where if I'm putting my FPL head on, I'm a bit annoyed, but I'm not really annoyed actually, which is a nice way of looking at it.
If only Darwin could stand up.
Jesus Christ! Right, okay, and similar sob story for you, isn't it?
Very much so. I'm trying to work out where I got 2 less points than you, because we've had very similar game weeks, but I think it's the 2 yellow card. Well, the yellow card for Saka and Lascelles coming off before half time as well. So yeah, I've somehow gotten an even worse score than you this week. 26 points so far. Salah and Son, the only 2 scorers, and both of them were pretty much negligent. Like, it didn't make any difference to me whatsoever. So yeah, it's just 1s and 2s across the board, which is frustrating because looking at my team this week, I actually felt pretty comfortable. I didn't think there were too many glaring errors. Darwin was the obvious one, but I had the money in the bank and I had a plan to sell him for Haaland in game week 19 anyway. So, best laid plans and all of that. But I think Tsimikas is now going to be a very significant issue. Lascelles is also going to be an issue in my team as well. And Taylor would be my 3rd defender that could come off the bench for game week 19, and he has Liverpool. So I think now it's kind of backed me into a bit of a corner to have to make a defensive transfer. So Haaland, unless I want to take a hit, might have to annoyingly wait a week. So yeah, it's been a really annoying game week. At the start of the day, I remember messaging you saying our bus teams for game week 19 look absolutely incredible. Like, there are benching headaches everywhere. And within the space of 3 or 4 hours, all of those have eroded. And now I'm looking at potentially having to take a hit just to get a fairly decent 11 out. So yeah, it's one of those weeks. They happen 3 or 4 times a season. And interestingly, maybe not interestingly for everyone, but I was looking back at my previous seasons. And at the end of the season, you can download a spreadsheet. I think Ben Crellin does it, where you can download your scores across the season week on week. And I was analysing that the other day just to see where I'd normally be at this point of the season. And we're kind of on track. It's not that bad. And I did notice there are 3 or 4 game weeks which doubled my rank in most of the seasons previous to this one. So I'm trying not to panic. I think looking at that and realising that this is actually just a fairly common bump in the road across a season, that this does happen to everyone, is helping keep me calm alongside having quite a few bevies as well definitely helps. But yeah, it's not a good game week. The rank has doubled. I'm at 450-ish K now, I think. But I mean, we'll move on. Game week 19 is just a couple of days away and it's Christmas. So I'm not going to get too pent up about it.
Yeah, that's the brilliance of this period, that you've always got time to recover, and that recovery comes fairly soon. But yes, it's very, very frustrating indeed.
Yeah,
I think sometimes you do. Maybe that's kind of where that kind of the hindsight that I spoke about came from, because a lot of this came down to getting the captain off, and it was one of those where you look at the fact that Son and Salah, who were two other captaincies that were in the mix potentially, have both done a goal effectively. But I really think that 95% of people who are hindsighting Watkins never thought of captaining anyone but Watkins this week. Don't know whether it's new manager bounce and the Kieran FPL discomfort put a really nice thread together, which I only saw retrospectively about how Sheffield United set up away. So maybe that was the case. But even then, you'd have thought that Villa in contention for the lead to become league leaders would have pulled something out there. And the penalty very early on when Watkins got kind of hauled over. If that goes in, I think that it's a very different game on our hands. So you've got that side of it. And then on the other side of it, it really is, as I said earlier, a case of dom or no dom. Because the red card for Bolly, I don't know if any of you have, but I'm sure you will have by the time this goes out, have seen the second yellow for Bolly. But he gets the ball, it's normal, it's quite a fairly normal tackle. VAR can't intervene because it's a second yellow. And he's sent off. And that kind of obviously, I guess, creates the conditions for Solanke to do what he did. And on weeks like this, where it's a case of pretty much one player making a difference for most people, that can be quite a tough one to swallow. I know there's as well a lot of people with the Luton goal when that went in. There's people who bought in Trippier this week and had kind of double Newcastle set up and things like that. So there's quite a lot of, I guess, stories either beginning in the case of Solanke, although arguably that's been going for a while, or maybe ending in the case of Newcastle defence being very solid. And it's interesting, we're in a very transitional period, because I found, like, in the last game, I somehow managed to manoeuvre myself into position where I had 5 players in that game. I could have had 6 as well if I played Saliba this week, versus other people who just had Salah. So I think there's definitely kind of, we're talking about it a few weeks ago, that there was a bit of a frustration about the fact it's all template, it's also everyone's got the same team, blah blah blah. I just don't think that's the case anymore. And even though yes, one player has made the story this week thus far, it definitely feels like we've seen a fragmentation. It's a case of kind of thinking about what we kind of do next. I mean, just taking the Solanke thing, on weeks like this, Sam, do we just get him in now? It's chasing points, but the effective ownership is bound to skyrocket. And
it will.
There's so many kind of onward impacts, aren't there? Like Haaland plans, assuming you want to keep Watkins, etc., etc. But he's in form. What do we do?
Yeah, it's difficult. When you showed me the show running order and put this question up, my instant reaction was, well, yeah, I mean, you do have to try and find a way, right? Because he is banging form. The data's great. The fixtures are decent. But on the flip side, a lot of us are still in a 3-5-2, myself included. And yes, Darwin is one of those two, but that spot is very much reserved for the Norwegian meat shield that is Erling Haaland. So how am I going to also squeeze in Dominic Solanke into that equation? Well, I would have to go to a 3-4-3, which is obviously at minimum 2 transfers to get it across, and I'd need to shift the funds around. Now, even that itself is quite difficult to do, because some of the midfielders I'd look at getting rid of, i.e. Anthony Gordon, for instance, aren't valuable enough to get me the free funds to get Archer back up to Solanke. So there's a lot of different factors that weigh in on this to get to Solanke. And I think especially with Trent and Trippier coming into the equation as well, a lot of managers are going to really struggle to get this combination, this blend of players, especially if you're already in that 3-5-2. I myself would, in a normal, if Haaland wasn't a factor, my first priority would be getting in Solanke this coming game week. But because he exists, because I've got that money in the bank, and because it's 50-50 whether or not he's going to play, I do need to consider that, because he will hurt even more than Solanke will. So yeah, we found ourselves in a little bit of a delicate situation here, and I'm not sure right now what the best way to get to Solanke would be, but I think right now he's not really in my plans for game week 19, and that might be a bit of an issue for me, but I think I've got to cover off the more pertinent issues, which are my defense and obviously getting back to Haaland ASAP.
See, I can do it. I can sell Archer for Solanke, and I can sell Martinelli and Darwin for Haaland and a 4.8 or something like that in a couple of weeks.
Is that a 1 -4 or
that's 1 -4? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's assuming I did Solanke this week, left Haaland, assuming we're not going to get any information, and then just played it on that way. I think that is possible. That's a viable move for me, really. A benchmark study this week and do the classic sell him, buy him back, and then sell him again. God, I used to love that guy. Now I just absolutely hate him. I'm on a list of enemies, that's for sure. It's obviously hugely situational, and we also need to kind of figure out what the hell is going on there. There was a picture of Haaland in training that then got deleted, or at least training on his own, and another picture that I think you posted of him kind of training, and then there was City teammates kind of way in the background, so you're assuming he's doing individual work. I know there's been a few whispers that he might be back for Boxing Day, or at least in the squad for Boxing Day, but I don't know what this all means. And the fact that I think City's fixture spacing is the worst. They've got 2 days between matches, and that kind of, I guess, makes me kind of wonder about, especially this week, if I can get away with it. I think I will be kind of thinking about getting away with it. I'm pretty sure the rest of the game's going to be thinking about getting away with it. The beauty of it being kind of around Christmas time, most people are going to be forgetting their transfers anyway, but there's also going to be probably people just not really wanting to do the cognitive work to kind of figure out how they're going to get Haaland in, and rather just kind of play hand to mouth. Right, Dominic Solanke's done loads of points this week. Definitely worth getting in. So I can do Archer's to Solanke, and I'm definitely considering it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's just that whole chasing points thing that annoys me a little bit.
I mean, how many hat tricks is he realistically going to score this season? Like, that's gone now, and I think in my mind anyway, I would love to get to him, but I feel like that horse has bolted a little bit. And personally, my priority was I've left the money in the bank specifically to get back to Haaland in one move before other people might be able to. And I don't know, my gut is telling me he plays Everton because they need him fit for it. They need to start winning games. And obviously now with Liverpool and Arsenal dropping points tonight, and Villa, they've got a real opportunity. And so if Haaland's anywhere near fit, I think they've got to try and get him out. But I don't know. It's a tough one because on one side, I completely agree with what you were saying, that a lot of people will probably forget their transfers over the Christmas period, but those same people have probably already forgotten to remove Haaland in the first place. So they've already probably just got him in just through forgetfulness anyway. So I'm not sure that's going to be much of an issue. I think he's still going to be 100% EO or something near enough, no matter what we do. So he's going to hurt. It's just whether or not Solanke's going to hurt more for one game week, because eventually I'm going to have to make that move. I just don't know.
And there's plus Salah's going to be captain for most people, right? Like, so again, that takes away a lot of the sting of Haaland. I think it's fine for Boxing Day. I really do. I'm just not particularly. I'm a bit nonplussed about it, put it that way. I think last year I grabbed him like when it looked like he was going to come back, and then I captained him straight away, and then he came in and scored a brace, if I remember correctly. I think that might have been against Southampton, actually. That's the first game.
Most people scored a brace against us. Tom,
that is true. Adam Armstrong's actually doing things in the Championship anyway.
My boy. Longest unbeaten run in the UK right now, just saying. So the thing is, what I do want to ask the chat and you actually is, if we do get news that Haaland is going to start against Everton, because it is possible we get an actual leak saying he's in the starting 11. Would you? Okay, number one, would you buy him back immediately, even for a hit? And then number two is, would you captain him over Mo, knowing that he starts?
So it's kind of an A leads to B. So because I wouldn't captain him, I therefore wouldn't be rushing to bring him back. Okay. The next week for Sheffield United,
bring him back if you were going to captain him.
Yeah, and I think that I'd be captaining Salah against Burnley, just because like the nature of how Burnley play and set up. I think that would be quite a good game to have your captain in. I don't, half fit, or we don't know the fitness of Haaland, right? But you've got the game against Sheffield United, which will probably be the big one to bring him back for. And I think as long as I've kind of facilitated the purchase back by then I think I'd be all right. That said, yes, it is Haaland. You're going to get the fear factor and all that sort of jazz. But I think there's so many sort of compounding factors which make me think at the moment that I probably would be leaving it. But then again, you've got the situation where you can say, oh, you know what, I've got a rare scenario where a Haaland captaincy is really going to impact, and it's in his repertoire, obviously, to score a hat trick, but it's equally in Salah's repertoire to do that against Burnley. I'm not sure I'd buy into any, he might be rested sort of things about Salah either. So yeah, I think at the moment I'm broadly in the I'm going to leave it B camp and think about if I get Solanke in for the Fulham game, which is possibly something I just probably need to just sort out, or if I get rid of Martinelli, or if I do both. But if I do get rid of Martinelli for a kind of a player of commensurate value, like a Bowen, for example, that does mean that the route back to Mr. Haaland becomes a case of selling one of Son or Salah a week early, and that can be quite headachy, to say the least. So yeah, what about you? Would you follow my logic about if I was captain and therefore I would buy him, or would you just be kind of FOMO'd all the way to buying Haaland back?
I think maybe I'm biased because it was always my plan. Like, I thought I was going to steal a march on people because I saw so many people in the community saying, oh, we can divest, it'll be fine, we can get him back in game week 2021 when Salah and Son go. I thought that, okay, maybe that's an opportunity for me. I don't need to divest. I can just hold on to the money and do the straight swap for Darwin and sort the issue there. Obviously getting Ollie for Haaland in the meantime. Yeah, without any certain news, I think because now I've got issues in my defence, I've been quite unfortunate that both of my options in the back line have now been crocked, and seemingly for quite a while. I mean, Lascelles, it might be a minor issue, but even if it is, Botman is now fit, so it'll probably be Botman and Shah for the foreseeable, and Tsimikas is probably quite a long-term one by the looks of it. So
yeah, he's broken his shoulder. He's broken his collarbone. They're saying.
Yeah, is that confirmed?
It looked like he did. Yeah, I just saw that a minute ago.
Right. Yeah. So
yes.
That's a transfer. Like I 100% need to sort that out because I'm not starting Taylor against Liverpool. So basically, then it becomes a question: am I going to buy Haaland for a -4 when I think Darwin probably does start against Burnley? And as bad as Darwin's been.
Yeah,
like it's Burnley and he is probably going to start. So if you're not confident that Haaland starts, if we don't get news and it's a -4 and there's the other captain option there of Salah, I think that's enough factors to just be like, I'll just leave it a week and just bring him back in for Sheffield, or Sheffield United rather. So yeah, it's a tough one, but I think given the other issues in my squads, there's enough going against him that I would have to probably wait unless we get real confirmation that he's starting.
Yeah, certainly. Hey, Raptor in the chat. A few people.
Yeah, a few people in the chat. Do you want to shout them out whilst we're at it?
Yeah. Hi Sponge, hi Swat, hi Donna. Looking forward to the next FPL meets. I think it's in February. Hope you get to make that. A mill with 54 points. FPL Raptor. I don't know who that is, but hang on. Who has more hair than you and Raptor?
Well, I got a comment on my YouTube channel yesterday, which was like, oh, you're basically the new Raptor because you're clearly going bold. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't think my hairline was that bad, but clearly people are seeing that my hairline's going. So a little bit self-conscious there. That's why the hat's on today.
Yes, that's probably a good thing. And Nick Moore says that he had Fleck and Areola, so he moved Areola to Dubravka, which I think people have had that sort of negative outcome. I'll just highlight it because we're talking about Shimmikas, a question from FPL Gas. Hello, fellas, wrapping presents while watching. I did all mine the other day when I was meant to be working. I was just like, it's pretty quiet on a Friday afternoon, and plus they said we can log off, so I did it all then. But he says, I think I need a Shimmikas replacement, 5.2 million in the bank. I slip of the tongue there. This week has just kind of gotten into my skull, infiltrated me. But he says, I'm thinking Chelsea. So you're in the situation, possibly Sam as well. I assume one of the cells of Shimmikas taking a hit is probably going to end up festering on your bench. I'm assuming it'll be Lascelles because you paid so little for him. So Shimmikas probably becomes the guy who then gets sold on within the limits of your Haaland buyback plan. That
Yeah.
sounds like something kind of an insurer would say. But within that kind of within that remit, again, continuing my insurance salesman line, I suppose you've only got a constrained budget as well. So who are you looking at to be bringing in?
My first instinct whilst watching the game today was, well, Gabriel is quite a simple swap in, right? Because I've still got the spare Arsenal spot. He's still very well priced and he's starting all the matches at the moment. So the best defence statistically in the league right now, good fixtures coming. Now the Liverpool game's out the way. Seems like pretty much a season-long hold. It does rule me out of going for someone a bit spicy for the Salah Son replacements in Ødegaard potentially, but I think there are enough other players there that I'm interested in that could mean that I can have a look around there and maybe shop elsewhere outside of Arsenal. But Gabriel came to mind pretty quickly. I'm not on triple Newcastle, so I could look at maybe doing something with Botman or possibly even Trippier if I'm going to hold off on Haaland for a little bit. I could even go as far as Trent if I was willing to wait on Haaland until Salah and Son go. But my instinct was Gabriel first and foremost. I think doubling up on the Arsenal defence long term, especially with the fixtures over the next few, seems like a fairly sensible, if a bit boring play. And
no, it's fine, isn't it? I mean, I'm on double Arsenal defence. Have I mentioned I've got Ben White?
No, you haven't actually.
No,
that's crazy. When did you do that?
So yeah, I've got them, and hopefully they're going to come through for me, Saliba and White. And I think it's absolutely fine to be doing that with Arsenal. An elite defence this year, that's for sure. I think we are still top of the SGC by a fair distance. Yeah, we are, which is more than good. So I'm absolutely fine with that. Gas said he was looking at Chelsea. So I guess with Cucurella injured, with Reece James injured again, I do feel a bit bad because he said he's received a lot of negativity about his injury, and it does feel like it's one of those where yes, you kind of think, shock horror, Reece James injured again, but it is Christmas, so maybe I'll be a bit nicer and say yes, there's a person underneath, and yes, I do feel sorry on a human level for Reece James. I know he wants to play football, but as it is, it does look like you're kind of looking at Chelsea for a lot of things. Colwell's one, old Malo Gusto is another who I think is probably going to be blipping on many people's sirens or many people's radars fairly soon if he does kind of. If he does show up against Wolves and it does kind of get his space in the team, that could be quite an interesting one. Although I think it was Disasi is playing there at the moment, right back, and then I suppose it's Colwell left back. I remember Pochettino was saying something about when Chilwell was marooned on the left wing a lot of the time that he doesn't want his fullbacks to be attacking anymore. So that might explain playing notionally a centre back at left back and right back. And so maybe it would be you kind of default to Colwell, but for the money. Gusto, if he does start to get a run in the team, could be a really fantastic pickup. But I think if you were looking at Chelsea right now, you would look at Colwell. It's just the inability to keep a clean sheet does concern me a little bit. And I remember I was listening to Planet FPL the other day when doing the quiz. I was doing it mentally while I was walking down to Sainsbury's of all places on the 22nd of December. Don't go to Sainsbury's at any point during the Christmas period. It is it's just mayhem. But anyway, James said in one of the most recent games, their oldest starting player was 26 years old, something like that. Really, really young team. I think that maybe, especially if Thiago Silva doesn't play, could be contributing to the lack of clean sheets and just something not really clicking.
A little bit of naivety there.
Yeah, and you got Mr. Petrovic in goal as well, the backup goalkeeper at the moment. So I don't know. I think the fixtures are good. Fixtures good. Defense not bad, but questionable at the moment. So if you can get across to Gabriel, I think that I'd be all for that, really. I think all of the kind of worries about, is he going to be benched at any point are just simply alleviated. I say that now, when against West Ham we see Kiwior or something play, but Kiwior's been linked to moves elsewhere at the moment as well.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen because of our lack of depth.
Yeah, that would seem.
But Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense for us to go that way. So quite a lot going on at the moment. I'm just kind of having a little look at kind of what everyone's doing, because we've really kind of started seeing moves. It's like almost 100,000 people have bought Solanke already.
Wow.
So there you go. I think people buying Alvarez too, interestingly. People still selling Haaland too, and Isaac. And the Kudus too. I think it's one of those where, should someone tell them?
No,
because he's got two games. He's got Arsenal and they've got Brighton, and he's off. So yeah, done a goal. Let's buy him in. I don't know. I think just to kind of, I know we're going to end up on a tangent there. So just to reel us back to the main sort of thread where we're talking about this Dom Solanke thing and everything like that. Why the question, Sam? It feels like we've been done this sort of dealing with poor FPL outcomes pod recently this season, as I said at the very start. Why does this keep happening? And what do we need to do better, do you think, other than do lots more points, you idiots?
I mean, you've summarized it perfectly, really. I mean, the thing is, at this point in the season, things move really fast. So it's very easy to get swept up in bandwagons. I get that. And Solanke is obviously going to be the next one. So it's just trying to remain calm and composed, because both of us have already ridden at least one or two really poor game weeks this season. And yet our overall ranks over the season so far generally haven't been that bad. I think everyone goes through a period during the season where you've got a really poor game week rank twice, maybe three times, especially over Christmas when there are so many game weeks coming thick and fast. Players get rotated, players get rested. It will happen. And like I said, I've had a look back at my game week on week scores over the last few seasons, just as something interesting to do whilst I'm off work, really. And every single season without fail, there's at least 3 or 4 of these exact weeks where almost all of the players blank. It's a complete nightmare. You think that the game is just conspiring against you. Your season is over. And yet all it takes is maybe 1 or 2 transfers and a little upturn in 1 or 2 of your players' form, and all of a sudden you're back on it again. So I think patience is a virtue. We've got to be very careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But also analyze each player on their own merit. So obviously we've got 3 or 4 issues in our squad of varying levels. I've got injuries to deal with, so those need to get sorted first. And then I can start thinking about the form players after that. So I think because we've both used our wild card, that's not an option for us for another couple of game weeks at least. It actually probably narrows our vision a little bit. It lasers our focus in a bit and tells us, right, well, we've only got 2 or 3 moves that we can possibly make. So we've got to prioritize the biggest issues right now. And for me, it's obvious because it's injuries, but for other people, it will be form picks, for instance. So you could look at a Solanke, but I don't think he's essential. I don't think he's a must buy, especially if you're in a 3-5-2. I think he's a good pick. He'll tick along really nice, and ideally, I want to get to a 3-4-3 with him in it. But there are other picks that are going to do very well over this period. And in midfield, Jared Bowen is a player that I was planning to put on all my thumbnails this week for YouTube, but he's just going to get overlooked yet again, despite having 11 goals this season. He's going to just be sort of swept to one side yet again because Solanke's the it thing. But Solanke's only going to get 1, at most, maybe 2 hat-tricks a season if he's very, very lucky, and hasn't got a Premier League hat-trick up until now. So the chances of it actually happening again and then continuing at this pace are pretty low. That's not to say he's not a good pick. If you've got him, you're laughing, but I don't think you have to dive on him immediately as the only player that's essential over the next period.
Oh, it's just so annoying, isn't it, really?
It is annoying. Very annoying.
Haaland's got the feeling, to me, of preparing for a blank game week, and we're kind of dancing around this one sort of central impediment to our teams, and there's the argument to just play like a less engaged manager perhaps and just follow the points rather than following kind of where we kind of want to be in a few weeks. And maybe kind of that idea of, in 3 weeks time I want my team to look like this, which I think is something that all engaged managers have in their heads. Maybe that's kind of what is perhaps holding us back to some extent. And every time I've done any move, and we've both kind of been doing it, we've both thinking, oh, can we do it with the remit that we're going to have Haaland back in the next 2 weeks? It's just because there's just such an annoying little sort of crossover period, isn't there? In game week 20, it's just game week 20, isn't it? Where you're going to have to kind of need to figure out having Son, Salah, and Haaland all in one team just for 1 week, and then moving it on. And before it was fine, but now because there's been a bit of a gap, other players who kind of come into the equation, it started to get a bit more dicey, especially if you've got Saka as well, who I don't have. Then life becomes even more messy to try to fit things in and sort things out. But yeah, no, it's I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with all of it.
What do you think? What do you think of everyone selling Salah in game week 20 to fund Haaland? Obviously, he's got Newcastle at home. What are your initial thoughts on that? Because I'm not sure that quite sits right with me.
No, it doesn't sit right with me either, because Newcastle look very abject defensively at the moment.
Yeah.
There are a couple of occasions, I think Luton also hit the post during
Especially
the
away
second
from
half.
home.
And it's not really kind of the lack of squad depth is truly telling. And I think they did themselves an enormous favour in some ways, falling out of the international competition. The European competition. I know they wouldn't see it that way, but getting out of those probably was a very good thing for them because it means that they can kind of concentrate and consolidate on the Premier League. And ditto, maybe falling out of the Carabao Cup too was maybe a bit of a blessing in disguise. Just trying to show that their squad's potentially a bit thin. Obviously had loads of injuries as well, and it's not quite kind of cut the mustard, I guess, at the moment. But yes, as they have where they are at the moment, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of one of those things where you're jumping early to try to facilitate. Like the FOMO is going to be there for everyone on Captain Hall. And I think you said earlier on that you're trying to steal a march on people. I think the march would have been a very short one because it would have just been the Everton game. Because I think the Sheffield United game, I think if there's any inkling that Haaland's fit, if he does show up on the bench or does play against Everton, then straight away everyone's going to be penciling in the Haaland transfer. That's just the truth of it. So I think it's just a case of just one game week, probably game week 19, where you can kind of be like, okay, I'm going to chance it without Haaland. I could get my ass smacked, but I might be okay, especially if the other guys kind of do well. Because there's that kind of argument that if your team is all spread out anyway, or the wealth's been redistributed, then you're going to be absolutely fine. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with us really going forward. I mean, yes, you said that we're tracking, where we probably should be. I know it's not a team game, but hey, we're going to just say that because we're buddies. How do we break into 100k and beyond? Like, it does feel to me that I've mentioned it a few times. There's this kind of idea of it being a bit of a season of moments, and the fact is, my team does look pretty template, but it's not. As I said earlier on, it's not. But I do think there's kind of this sort of power five sort of midfield that's going around. The Gordon, Saka, Palmer, Salah, Son, which is soon to be broken up, but that's still there. Watkins, Solanke, and probably Haaland is going to be the front three for loads of people going forward. At the back, double Arsenal defence plus Pedro Porro. So it does look like we're kind of going to be converging soon. But then there's kind of from game 21 onwards, as we spoke about with Mark last week, a bit of a breaking point too. I suppose it's just about being kind of smart within those sort of parameters, and ultimately hoping you get lucky with whatever kind of smaller differentials you bring in, especially if you're not going to be breaking the bank in terms of buying Trent, for example, and going for 4-4-2 or something like that.
Yeah, I think again, I hate to bang the same drum week in, week out, but it is about patience. It's a long season. We're not quite halfway through yet. And the second half of the season is where gains are made. So just staying in the hunt. I think some people have been terming it the peloton this year, in particularly. That saying is definitely taken off. So yeah, staying in that peloton for as long as you can, and then using chip season, those doubles, those blanks. A lot of the engaged managers sort of drop off around this period where maybe they previously haven't been so engaged. They get a little bit sick and tired after a couple of bad game weeks in a row. Maybe around Christmas as well, they miss a deadline or two. So this sort of period and beyond is where the advantages really do start to pay off, I think. So just staying in the hunt around now, making sure your squad is relatively stable and relatively well managed, and then trying to take those marginal gains in the weeks where there are bigger swings. So you've got the doubles, you've got the bench boosts, you've got the free hits, all of those sort of good things that we love about FPL. That's where we can make hopefully some pretty serious gains. And I think just being in and around this spot at the moment is, look, don't get me wrong, I prefer to be in the top 100k already, but given like how I've been measuring over the last few seasons, I've come from a lot further back from this and been top 100k by the end. So it's easily possible. Just need to keep making fairly logical, very decisive moves that make sense for your team in the long run, not just week on week on week, because I think that's where you lead yourself down a little bit of a blind alley. And then eventually you've got 5 or 6 issues in your squads that are all differentials and they're not hitting. And then you're forced into a wild card when actually a wild card in the second half of the season around doubles and around other chips can be really, really powerful. And I think other people will waste it. And that's where we need to maybe kind of hit home our advantage, I guess is the best way of putting it. So stay calm. It's not perfect right now. And it's a terrible week for both of us in particular. I'm sure there's lots of you out there which are very happy with the score this week if you've got Solanke in, but it happens to us all. I think just remaining fairly calm about it and remembering that it does happen a few times a season is probably the only way we can really talk you down at the moment. And that's the way I'm going to calm myself down for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's marginal. And the fact is that a week like this was always likely to happen because I've been semi-consciously building towards having Arsenal and Liverpool as being kind of the main spine of my team because for obvious reasons. And a week like this, when they faced off, was always going to occur. We both said at the start of the week on WhatsApp to each other that we got very, very low expectations. It reminds me of that meme, my expectations were low, but holy shit. But a week like this was always going to happen in that sort of context. So yeah, again, I'm kind of, and there's also the fact that if you've got a really bad red arrow, next week is likely to be a good green arrow. So yes, I think you're probably right. It's just me strategically setting myself up for a nice New Year's green. That's just how it is sometimes, isn't it? Should we go on to the old bowl claims quickly, and then take any further questions from the chat?
Right. So last week's bold claim was a maximum of 2 clean sheets across all fixtures. Well, this current game week, that's gone. It was meant to have updated, but for some reason it hasn't. Your bold claim, if you remember it, do you want to go first whilst I try and recall what mine was? Because for some reason
that was you last week.
This is my last week's bold claim, but it's not updated on the graph for some reason. I did do it.
Oh, I can see it. It says maximum 2 clean sheets across all fixtures.
Yeah, that was last week's.
Oh, I'm confused, Sam. I've had too many beers for this.
Okay, well, so my bold claim for this week, now that I've remembered it, is Everton to take points off of City in Game Week 19.
Okay, perfect. So last week, my bold claim was that Luton beat Newcastle. And I've actually done a point. And I did ask you for 2 points. But I don't know if you're going to give me them. I think that makes it 4-2, doesn't it?
It does. Do you want 2 points? You're allowed them if you want. It's Christmas after all.
I'm having them. Then. That's for free.
Fine.
Perfect.
I don't think it was that bold, but yeah, fine.
I thought that was pretty bold. Like all of the odds were stacked against Luton, etc. I also backed that in a prediction game that I play, which I was very happy about. Got a unique 3 points there for correct score. Very, very nice. This week, I am going for 5+ goals in Brighton versus Spurs. I do think that as Son could be an outside really good captain shout, especially if we do kind of get some sort of scare when it comes to Mo Salah. I do think that game is ripe for goals given how both teams play. Brighton unable to defend, Spurs able to defend but have likely Eric Dyer as their key central defender. I think he lost the header to Dwight McNeil. So
wow,
that probably tells you all you really need to know there. So yes, 5 goals in Brighton versus Spurs. It's a bit of a mild claim, that one, really, I'm going to say. But I think 5+ goals in any game is actually fairly unique if you look at the numbers. So I'm happy enough with that. So there we go.
Yeah, cool. Absolutely.
A couple. So one question we did get on Old X and
Okay.
Nate Jacobson. If you have to keep one of Son or Salah, which one do you keep over Afcon, the Asia Cup? How many games will they actually miss? Is it worth moving them in and out, especially if you have loads of money tied up in both? So I'm assuming if you bought Son at 9, bought Salah at 12.5, then maybe you could be thinking, well, how far are they really going to drop? And I can imagine, especially because Son came into the season a mite underpriced. I think just because a symptom of how last year was a bit of a bit rubbish for him, and Salah's sort of emergence as Mr. Consistent shock horror out of nowhere. But from last year getting 239 points and finding himself getting a 0.5 million price deduction, yeah, nice work, FPL. I think there's definitely kind of questions there about, can you afford to play it with one of them on your bench? I think if you do have to, if you really are kind of, I don't know, if you're hell bent on doing that, then maybe you keep Son and not having that money, especially for 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, okay. We're all probably going to be looking at cheap players, and a little bit like the Haaland situation, we probably are going to be keeping the money in the bank to be buying one or both of them back pretty much ASAP. We're still probably going to. I still think it's probably going to be a bit much to be benching 1 or 2 of those for that time. 2 definitely not, and 1 if I could kind of get away with it, I'd almost be tempted to kind of bench Son and sell Salah just so that money can be redistributed. Because it's a hell of a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. Couldn't put it better myself. I think Salah is too much to just have sat on your bench for a few weeks. I mean, honestly, I'm going to be selling both, I think, unless something very, very weird happens. But I'd imagine both of them are gone for a few weeks. To answer sort of the second part of the question, which is how long they're away for, we don't officially know. It depends how far they go in the tournament, but we know it's game week 21 and almost, I think it's definitely game week 22 unless they crash out of like the group stages early or something like. But anyway, they're both around 6-1 to lift the trophy, so of their independent tournaments. So you'd imagine they get quarters, semis on average. So we're looking at game week 24, I think, and then I think it's game week 25 if they go all the way. I think that's the off ramp if they get all the way to the final and obviously win the thing. So yeah, I think we've got enough of a runway to have a look at other players. I don't think benching them for 4 potential weeks when we don't know how long they'll be gone for. I mean, you might get lucky if you bench them and they come back after 2 game weeks, but that's still 2 game weeks without them, without some pretty expensive assets, when there are a lot of very decent midfielders that you can easily just do a 1 swap move to. You don't even need to divest. You can just hold the money in the bank and then you can get them back in 1 move as well. So I think I'd probably sell both, but if I was pressed to keep one, it would be Son, I think, because he's just easier to hold on to, because he's just that much cheaper, really. But yeah, I would be very happy to sell both, and I'm planning on doing so.
Yeah, I think if you do have to buy Haaland back though, then you're looking at a hit anyway, aren't you? So I don't know. It might be one of those where, especially if I go 3-4-3, I might have to have a think about what I do then. But I think it's one of those where it lends itself to -4 because both those players won't be around. I think Richarlison went off with some discomfort in his back.
Yeah, I think Ange says it's not too bad.
Okay, so but I think that I wouldn't be surprised that means he misses the Brighton game, given the kind of we're playing on Thursday actually. I've lost count of what the days are at the moment, but I think that's probably okay.
Yeah, that's 4 or 5 days.
Decent if sort of spacing, and you've got Brennan Johnson at 5.8, 2 assists today. Could be the one that you go to instead. Really
Don't
there.
mind that.
Yeah, I mean, have you given any more thought to what you're doing? I know you've got your sexy spreadsheet, beloved of your partner, that you appear to spend a lot of time. You've really been at a loose end, haven't you? Looking at the last few seasons. I'm sure that spreadsheet has been absolutely mauled. Have you started thinking about Game Week 21 yet? Because I think even the changes we make now, surely, maybe no, I don't think they do. But I suppose it's only if you go into a 3-4-3, then maybe there's a bit more to think about.
Well, I think that you, again, hit the nail on the head. That is exactly why they do matter, because if you're future planning. Game week 21 is only a couple of transfers away at the moment, so you've got to really map it in to your thinking, and that's 2 transfers out in game week 21. So you want to make sure, if possible, that you're not doing that for a hit. And I've got quite a few other moves that I need to make with injuries, with Darwin. So I think having that plan ahead of time, I think it's likely I'll have to take at least a -4 at some point to sort of get back ahead. But yeah, I think there are quite a few midfielders out there. If I don't go for Gabriel in defence, then Ødegaard's on the menu, but otherwise Bowen is right up there. Richarlison, I think, will be fine by that point, if not for game week 19. And yes, I think there are fairly straight swaps, but it's making sure I've got, more than anything else, the transfers to do it for free.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
Doing it without taking the hit will be the advantage that week, I think. But yeah, like you, I'm very, very interested in a 3-4-3 at this point. Again, though, that's an extra 2 transfers on top of the plan moves that I'm already looking at making over the next 3 or 4. So yeah, there's a few routes that could be interesting, but all of them would involve using the money from Salah or Son, because I inevitably am going to spend some of that money on Haaland anyway. And then shifting Archer up and then making it difficult for myself to get back to them in game week 24 or 25. So yeah, more thinking needs to be done. But the simple plan right now is definitely making sure that I know which 2 assets I want for game week 21 as replacements for Son and Salah.
Sure.
And trying to make sure I can do it without a hit if possible, although that will be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to see kind of how it goes. Especially, I was just reflecting on. Well, I was pouring my beer out a second. I was listening to you, but I was reflecting on kind of where we were at the start of the season, saying that we're never going to be using the third striker. It's all going to be about 3-5-2, and it's amazing, isn't it? The fact that you've got so few strikers of note, but there's 2 or 3 of them who are just popping like anything, and you've got Solanke now. In this, we kind of the question kind of that always comes up about Trent, for example, is that he's kind of outscoring the kind of commensurate midfielders. I mean, is he worth buying in? And this year, kind of you look at the midfield and think maybe not. But suddenly you've got kind of the dual forces of a player who's consistent and also has that effective ownership that's going to be kind of rolling in strong behind him. Suddenly we are sat looking at 3-4-3s. I think that's just really interesting. We may well turn around again and be like, actually, I don't really want this anymore. I'm going back to 3-5-2, but it's never too bad. It's
big at the back's a thing again now, and that was just gone to nowhere at the start of the season.
Big at the back, is it true big at the back? I mean, I suppose it is, because in the past, I think that the whole thing was predicated, and I think we're having Nick on a couple of times in the next few weeks, and that was always predicated on kind of the idea that you'd have Leighton Baines and then shit basically as your defence. So I suppose it is, because especially because you'll have Gabriel, I've got White, Saliba, Porro, and then Leno, who's basically a 5 million goalkeeper. So that's spending a lot more in defence than you ever used to. So yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah.
But Trippier and Trent are obviously increasingly popular. I've seen a few teams out there that are moving towards Trent, Trippier, Porro as the 3, and then maybe a couple of cheapies after that. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I like this period of FPL where everyone's kind of questioning what the next meta is, and not knowing quite what the best moves are makes it all really interesting, because there's plenty of different like alleys we can walk down right now, and obviously inevitably we're going to go down the wrong one, but there are some options out there, and big at the back could be the way to go over the next few weeks.
It could be. The defense has been, it basically is big at the back in order to get attacking returns.
Yeah.
Whereas the midfield and the forwards, I don't know. I put money where my mouth is. I've not bought a Newcastle defender back. So I put my money where my mouth is really on that. And I do kind of worry for them. I think that kind of the break in the start of January is not for the FA Cup third round, where I'm sure they'll field the kids, as that could not come soon enough for them. And maybe after that things will ameliorate. But you can see Trent definitely looks up for it, doesn't he? Of all Liverpool players, he definitely looks like really up for it, and has his last kind of few games has been really on fire. It's like game week 24 or so. They run into an okay little run before the Man City game, and after that, so maybe that's kind of when you start to get an itchy trigger thing when it comes to the wild card. But hey, there we go. Shall we? I think we're already starting to talk about it. Should we go on to transfers and captains? Because we've been running
Let's
for
do
about
it.
50 minutes now, I think.
Yeah, there you go. You're up first this week, so do you want to run through
I am.
where your head's at?
So I sent this to you before Shimikas broke his collarbone. The good
Yeah.
news is that I've got Saliba on the bench, so I'm going to be playing Saliba and White and Pedro Porro and Leno. So Mr. Shimikas is going to be rotting my bench for probably quite a long time because I've got other things to deal with, basically. I did say I'm going to remove Martinelli, but I think because of the fact I can sell Archer to get Solanke and then sell Martinelli and Darwin to get Haaland and a cheapie, I think that the road is pretty clear for me to go to 3-4-3 with a -4 in game week 20. So it looks like a pretty straightforward Archer to Solanke move. I'll bench Martinelli because he's a useless piece of crap. Didn't play very well today. Missed when Alisson was prone. I don't know if you saw that chance, Sam, but he missed probably last year he'd have scored, no question.
Yeah.
Lost possession quite a few times. He's been doing that quite a lot recently. I would not be shocked to see Trossard play against West Ham. So my feeling is that I bench him and then do a 3-4-3 with Solanke. I know it's really boring, but ultimately people who did the move this week just gone for Solanke also probably felt the move was really boring, but made a lot of sense. And yes, there's definitely kind of going to be charges of kind of being quite straightforward here, but I don't really see much positivity in moving Martinelli out for maybe a Bowen, but it's Arsenal, and we do have a fairly elite defence, or moving out Martinelli for another. So Martinelli is probably going to stay for this week, just be on my bench, and then next week become a sacrificial cow for getting Haaland back in. I was replacing him with some sort of 4.x. Well, I think it's 4.8, 4.7 that I've got to replace him with. So I'm sure I'll find somebody. I don't really know who that's going to be. God, it's not good, is it? Josh McAtee's going to come in.
Yeah.
Old Clivert. Something like that. I don't bloody know at this moment, to be honest with you. But I'm happy.
As long as they're playing, that's kind of fine. They're getting minutes. They'll get the odd attacking return. McAtee is fine.
Because you've got, I might need to, I need to think about it a little bit more, actually, because if I'm kind of holding Shimikas until, if he's broken his collarbone, he'll be out for a while, right? So I'll be kind of just holding Shimikas and playing with two people on the bench for a while, Taylor plus whoever I bring in. So I need to think about it a tiny bit. Maybe we McAtee at 4.4, he would come in and new manager bounce and all that sort of thing. So that'd be where I'd go. They got Man City the week. I'll be bringing him in as well. Actually, he won't play that because he's on loan for them, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, So there are different rules for different loans, so do make sure that he's like, I guess the word is cup tied or loan tied. He can't play, but
also Lewis Miley, who looks about 12 at Newcastle. I don't know, Sam. Am I meant to know at the moment? I don't know. That's something for 2 game weeks time, Tom. Yes. So there we go. Probably Mr. Solanke. And I'm going to keep an eye on the price tonight. So I'm sure everybody's piling in now, steaming in, as James from Planet would say. Right. What about you?
Well, I mean, it was going to be really easy this week. Again, like I said to you this morning, benching headaches everywhere. It looked really nice. And now 2 injuries to my back five means that I almost certainly need to make a transfer there before anything else, just to make sure I field a relatively decent back three, because Taylor against Liverpool at home is not a good player to be playing this week, I don't think. So, yeah, Tsimikas is probably the priority because he's a bit more expensive. It gives me a little bit more to play with. I can get to Gabriel. I'm sure there are other options out there, so I'll have a quick look to see if I'm missing anyone obvious. But I think because I don't have triple Arsenal at the moment and the good fixtures to come, I'll probably move there. And then it's just a question of whether or not I chance it on Haaland for the -4 from Darwin. I mean, I obviously would love to get rid of Darwin for as many hits as it takes, but it is Burnley. And he didn't start today, so you'd think he probably starts against Burnley, especially because
there's spaces in behind as well.
Yeah, Diaz and Gakpo didn't play exactly well.
They're not going to be able to do a Sheffield United because of how they. I mean, admittedly, I've not watched every minute of Burnley, but because of how they play, it doesn't strike me as a team who's suddenly going to be able to pull out a low block. They'll try to do it,
especially at home. They'll have a go.
Well,
yeah, I think Darwin. I mean, I would prefer to sell him. Don't get me wrong, but I think it might just be one of those where I'm like, I'll just have him for this week. I'll leave him be because they're not selling him for a hit. Probably isn't wise when I'm not certain that the player that I'd be bringing in is going to play. If I was certain Haaland was definitely going to start, then I'd probably just give it a go anyway and just take the hit. But as it stands, I'll probably just use the 1 free transfer, sort out the defense, get that solid back three of regular 90-minute men, and then I can kind of leave Lascelles to one side for a couple of game weeks if I have to, sort out Haaland next week, and then obviously Salah going forward. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. But yeah, I mean, as it stands, it's not really locked in by any means. But yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward for me.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's good. I know it's not the sexiest kind of final transfer of 2024,
no,
23, but hey, here we are in the Dom or no Dom scenario, shouting at the banker, Dom. Again, that sounds really bad actually. If you're into other things, right? Okay, I think that is it on that very kind of strange note. I've clearly had too many beers, but I'm off to play Baldur's Gate now after editing this. I'm very excited about that. Although I hear my baby crying in the background, so I don't think I'm going to be playing it just yet.
No, I think you're probably on baby duty for a little bit, but luckily for me, usually after this is over, because it's pre-recorded, I have to do a little bit of editing, get it up on YouTube. But actually, because it's live streamed, I can just chill out, go grab another beer, and forget about it for a week. So yeah, hopefully this is gonna be a nice, easy one, and maybe we can do it again in the future if it's well received by the community as well. But hopefully if you've tuned in live, thank you so much. If you're listening back tomorrow morning, then hopefully you've enjoyed it. We were, as always, who got the assist. You can follow us on X at WGTA_FPL. I'm on there at FPL Pricey. Instagram and Threads, it's WGTA.FPL. Again, just FPL Pricey on there for me. If you did enjoy the pods, if you could please follow us on those socials and give the pod a 5-star rating if possible, wherever you're listening in. That would be fantastic. And if you're watching on YouTube, especially if you're on the live stream right now, then please do leave a like. Please do subscribe. It does make a massive difference to us, especially as it's Christmas. That would be a great gift. But yeah, from me and from Tom, Merry Christmas, and have a good Game Week 19 if we don't speak to you before then.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Happy Christmas to you and yours, as per. Yes, we hope you enjoyed the pod. Thanks so much if you were watching on YouTube. We hope to assist you however this turned out. I've written here, which I think turned out absolutely fine. And we'll be back again briefly on December the 28th. We may just make live a thing because there's been no different than normal, to be honest, Sam. But yes, have a lovely Christmas, everybody. Hopefully Cole Palmer scores 78 points tomorrow to give us green arrows. And yes, we'll speak to you very, very soon. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely Christmas.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist?